Ambassador Thiel stood at the observation window of the Valoran diplomatic outpost, his 4 eyes watched the distant stars with growing fear. Somewhere out there beyond the edge of the Orion Nebula, his home world was dying. The reports had started coming 3 days ago. The Kree swarm had arrived at Sithar Prime without warning. Their black ships filled the sky like a plague of insects. The Krath were not interested in negotiation. They were not interested in trade. They wanted only one thing. They wanted to consume. Xiles pressed his thin fingers against the cold glass. His blue skin had turned pale with worry. He had served the Valorian conquered for 200 years. He had seen many things, but he had never seen anything like this. Ambassador, said his assistant, a young Valoran named Sarah. The defense fleet has fallen back to the capital city. They cannot hold much longer. Closed his eyes. The Valoran people were not warriors. They had built their civilization on diplomacy and trade. Their ships were designed for carrying goods, not weapons. Their soldiers were trained for peacekeeping, not war. Against the Kree swarm, they were helpless. How many ships do the CFT have? Thiel asked. Over 300 confirmed. More are arriving every hour. 300 ships. The Valoran defense fleet had only 40. Most of those were already burning in the atmosphere of Sithara Prime. Thiel turned to face his assistant. Send a distress call. Use all frequencies. Contact the Galactic Union. Contact anyone who can hear us. Sarah hesitated. Ambassador, the main Union fleets are engaged on the far side of the galaxy. Their response time is 47 standard rotations. I know, Phil said quietly. Sithara Prime will fall in 3. He walked to the communication console and began recording his message. His voice was steady, but his hearts were breaking. He spoke of the attack. He spoke of the civilians trapped in the cities below. He spoke of children hiding in shelters while Kree warriors hunted them through the streets. He begged for help. He promised anything in return. The message went out across the stars, then waited. Thought the first responses came within hours. The Mallory expressed their sympathy but could not spare any ships. The Tandrix offered prayers to their gods. The Yulani suggested that the Valoran should negotiate a surrender. None of them would come. I sat alone in the darkness of the communication room. On the screens around him, he watched his world burn. The Crest drop ships were landing now. Their soldiers were spreading through the cities like a disease. The screams of his people echoed through the recordings. Then a new signal appeared on the console. Dials looked at the source coordinates with confusion. The signal was coming from the edge of Union space, from a region that few species ever visited, from a small yellow star called Sol. The humans thus knew little about them. They had joined the Galactic Union only 200 years ago. In galactic terms, that was nothing, a single breath, a moment. Most species considered them primitive. They were emotional, aggressive, and dangerously unpredictable. Some called them barely civilized. Others called them something worse. Thought the communication screen flickered to life. A human face appeared. It was a female. Realized her skin was dark brown and her hair was cut short. Her eyes were black and sharp like knives. She wore a gray uniform with symbol Stylex did not recognize. This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Systems Navy, she said. We received your distress call. We are Prepared to assist, they stared at her. You would help us, we have never even spoken before, you are under attack. Admiral Tanaka replied, innocent people are dying, that is reason enough. Kreth have 300 warships, perhaps more. How many ships can you bring? The Admiral smiled. It was a strange expression among Valorans showing. Teeth was a sign of fear, but this human did not look afraid. Enough, she said. Simply, Thyle hesitated. He had heard stories about humans. They were said to be reckless. They took risks that no other species would consider. They threw themselves into battle without calculating the odds. Many said this made them dangerous. Others said it made them insane. But what choice did he have? How long until you can arrive? Thyle asked. The 7-Sol expeditionary fleet is burning hard toward your position. We will arrive in approximately 6 standard hours. 6 hours the Kree would have complete control of the planet by then. The fighting would be over. The harvesting would begin. I do not think we can survive that long, Thyle admitted. Admiral Tanaka leaned forward, her eyes locked onto his through the screen. Ambassador, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Tell your people to hide. Tell them to find the deepest shelters, the strongest buildings, the most remote locations they can reach. Tell them to stay quiet and stay alive. And then we will come for them. There was something in her voice that Thyle had never heard before. It was not hope, it was not optimism, it was certainty. This human believed completely that she would arrive in time. She believed that she would save his people. She believed that she would defeat an enemy that outnumbered her by unknown odds. It was madness, pure madness. And yet found himself believing her. I will spread the word, he said. Good. Admiral Tanaka nodded. Hold position, Ambassador. The 7th Sol expeditionary fleet is coming. Tell your people to stay alive until then. We will handle the rest. The screen went dark. Silik sat in silence for a long moment. Then he stood and began sending new messages to the shelter commanders, to the resistance fighters, to anyone who could still receive a signal. He told them help was coming. He told them to survive. He did not tell them that the help was coming from humans. He was not sure if that would give them hope or terror. In the depths of space, somewhere between the stars, 47 human warships burned through the void. Their engines glowed like angry suns. Their crews prepared for battle. Their weapon systems hummed with deadly power. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UEE's Perseverance. She looked at the tactical display, showing the Kree fleet around Satara Prime. 300 enemy ships, 47 under her command. The numbers were not in her favor. She smiled anyway. All hands, she announced over the shipwide channel. We have a colony to save and monsters to kill. I expect everyone to do their duty. Tanaka out. The fleet raced toward destiny. In 6 hours, the CTH swarm would learn why humans were feared throughout the galaxy. In 6 hours, everything would change. The sky above Satara Prime had turned black with crest ships. They moved in perfect formation, their insectoid vessels clicking and humming as they communicated through the dark. The blockade was complete. Nothing could get in. Nothing could get out. In the underground shelters beneath the capital city, 4 million Valorans waited to die. Elder Marrows had lived for 312 years. He had seen the rise and fall of Governments, he had witnessed the birth of new technologies and the death of old traditions, but he had never felt fear. Like this, the Kree were not conquerors. They were harvesters. They did not want slaves or territory. They wanted meat. The children were crying. Their parents held them close and whispered lies about how everything would be fine, but everyone knew the truth. The crest dropped. Ships had landed in the city above. Hunting had begun. Elder Marrows said a young technician named Prill, "We have received a message from Ambassador Thiel. What does it say? Help is coming. We must hold on for 6 hours." Marvos looked at the frightened faces around him. 6 hours, the Krath would find this shelter in 2, maybe 3. The walls were strong, but they were not designed to resist a full assault. "Who is coming to help us?" he asked. Priya hesitated. "Message does not say." Above them the city burned. Kree warriors moved through the streets in swarms of hundreds. They were tall and thin with black shells covering their bodies like armor. Their eyes were red and empty. Their mouths were filled with teeth designed for tearing flesh. They moved with terrible speed, their clawed feet clicking against the stone roads. The Valorans, who had not reached the shelters, ran and hid. Some were caught. Their screams echoed between the buildings before falling silent. The crest did not kill quickly. They preferred their food to be fresh. Dot in orbit, Hive Commander watched the harvest with satisfaction. This world was rich with prey. The Valorans were soft and weak. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural defenses. They were perfect. "Commander," said one of his officers, "we are detecting unusual energy signatures at the edge of the system." "What kind of signatures?" "Slip space ruptures. Multiple vessels are incoming." Scry made a sound like grinding metal. It was the craft version of laughter. "The Galactic Union send ships to save their friends." "How many?" 47 confirmed. 47 against 300. Skriz laughed again. "They are fools. Let them come. We will add their crews to the harvest." The space around Satora Prime began to twist and tear. Points of light appeared, growing brighter with each passing second. Then the sky ripped open. Clear's throat. The human ships emerged from slip space like predators, breaking through the surface of dark water. They were not elegant. They were not beautiful. They were built for one purpose only. They were built for war. The flagship came first. The UES Perseverance was a mountain of metal and weapons. Its hull was scarred from a 100 battles. Its armor was thick and black. Along its sides, weapon ports glowed with barely contained energy. Behind it came the rest of the fleet, cruisers and destroyers and frigates, all bearing the same marks of combat. These were not parade ships. These were killing machines. Snort. Scry stared at the tactical display. Something was wrong. These vessels did not match any design in the Crest database. Their weapon signatures were strange. Their formation was aggressive, and they were accelerating directly toward his fleet. "Open a communication channel," Screered. "Warn them to turn back or be destroyed." The channel opened. Scry SS spoke in the common galactic language, unknown. "Vessels, you are entering a CF harvest zone. Turn back now and you may leave alive. Continue forward and you will be consumed like all the others." There was a moment of silence, then a human voice responded. "This is Admiral Yuki Tanaka of the United Earth Systems Navy. We have come for the people of Satara Prime. You'll release them immediately." and withdraw from the system. Skriz could not believe what he was hearing. This human female was giving him orders. A hive commander of the Kree swarm, he had conquered 40 worlds. He had harvested billions of prey. Who was this creature to challenge him? You are outnumbered 6-1, replied. Your threats are empty. Surrender now and I will grant your crew a quick death. Admiral Tanaka's response was cold and hard. Well, you do not negotiate with those who prey on the defenseless. You have 60 seconds to begin your withdrawal. After that, we opened fire. In the shelter beneath the city, Elder Marrows watched a display screen that showed the orbital battle space. He counted the human ships, then he counted the CF ships. His heart sank. They cannot win, he whispered. They are too few. But something strange was happening. The human ships were not stopping. They were not waiting. They were charging directly into the Kree formation at full speed. What are they doing? Prill asked. That is suicide. 60 seconds passed. Admiral Tanaka did not wait for a response from the Kree. All ships, she commanded, weapons free. Target their carriers first. Make them bleed. The Perseverance fired first. Its main cannons released beams of pure energy that cut through the darkness. They struck a CRT cruiser directly in its center. The alien ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal. The rest of the human fleet opened fire at the same moment. The space around Satara Prime became a storm of weapons fire. The CFT ships began to die. Watched in shock as his fleet started to fall apart. The human weapons were unlike anything he had seen before. They were brutally effective. His ships were being torn to pieces. Return fire, he screamed. Destroy them. The craft fleet responded with everything they had, but the human ships were fast and well-armored. They moved through the enemy formation like wolves among sheep. They took damage, but they did not stop. They did not retreat. Then something even more impossible happened. Small craft launched from the human carriers. Fighters, tiny vessels with only 1 or 2 crew members each. They swarmed toward the CRT ships in waves of hundreds. Rix could not understand. Every civilized species used drones for fighter combat. No one risked living pilots in such small and vulnerable craft. It was wasteful. It was wasteful. It was primitive. It was insane. But the human pilots flew like demons. They dodged between laser blasts and missile swarms. They targeted weak points with perfect accuracy. They crashed their damaged ships into Kregan engines rather than a jackdot. In 11 minutes, 63 Kree warships were reduced to burning debris. In the shelter, Elder Marvels watched with tears in his eyes. The impossible was happening. The humans were winning. Who are these creatures? Prill whispered in wonder. Marvel shook his head slowly. I do not know, but I think every star in the sky that they came above them. The battle continued to rage. The humans pushed deeper into the Kree formation. Their weapons never stopping. Their pilots never hesitating. They fought with a fury that the galaxy had not seen in 10,000 years. Admiral Tanaka stood on her bridge, watching the destruction. With calm eyes, they had lost 8 ships so far, 217 crew members dead. It was a heavy price, but the craft were losing more, much more. Admiral said, her tactical officer, enemy carriers are attempting to retreat. Do not let them escape. We need to protect those drop ships from landing any more troops. Human fleet surged forward, hunting the retreating craft like predators chasing wounded prey on the surface below. Craft ground forces suddenly stopped, receiving reinforcements. Their link to the fleet above was broken. They were trapped on a hostile world with an enemy they could not see. And somewhere in the sky, human dropships were beginning their descent. The real fight was about to begin. The human dropships fell from the sky. Like meteors, they were ugly machines. All sharp angles and thick armor, they hit the atmosphere hard, their heat shields glowing orange against the darkness. The crown forces looked up at them with confusion. Their commanders had told them nothing could break through the blockade, but here they came. Anyway, the first dropship landed in the central plaza of the capital city. Before the dust had settled, its door slammed open. Figures emerged from within. They were not machines. They were not robots. They were living beings wrapped in gray armor, carrying weapons in their hands. The Valorans hiding in nearby buildings watched through cracked windows. They had expected the Galactic Union to send drones if anyone came at all. That was how modern warfare worked. That was the civilized way. Flesh and blood soldiers were considered outdated, wasteful, primitive, but these humans had come themselves. Sergeant Marcus Cole was the first to step onto alien soil. He was a large man, broad across the shoulders, with skin the color of dark earth. His exoskeleton suit hummed with power as it supported his movements. In his hands, he carried a rifle that fired metal projectiles at incredible speeds. Old technology, some would say, but old technology that worked. Behind him came his squad, 12 soldiers in total, men and women from different parts of Earth. Different colors, different backgrounds, different stories, but they moved as one unit, spreading out across the plaza with practiced efficiency. Contact ahead, said Private Chun, pointing toward a side street. Multiple hostiles approaching. Marcus looked through his helmet's display. He could see them now. Kree warriors, at least 50, moving toward their position with terrible speed. Find cover, Marcus ordered. Wait for my signal. The squad scattered behind rubble and broken vehicles. They waited in silence as the clicking of Kree feet grew louder. The aliens were fast. They were strong. Their shells could deflect most energy weapons. They had conquered dozens of worlds they had never faced. Humans. The first crest rounded the corner. Marcus waited until Twaymore had followed, then he gave the signal. Squad opened fire. The sound was deafening. Human kinetic weapons did not hum or whisper like energy guns. They roared. They screamed. They punched holes through crest armor like paper. The aliens fell in waves, their bodies torn apart by metal and fury. The remaining crest charged. They were warriors born. They did not know fear. They did not know retreat. They knew only the hunt. That Marcus stood and met them head-on. His first shot took a crest through its eye, his second destroyed the leg of another. When a warrior got too close, he used his rifle as a club, shattering the creature's skull with a single blow. Around him, his squad fought with the same brutal efficiency. They were outnumbered 4-1. It did not matter. In 90 seconds, every craft in the plaza was dead. Across the city, similar scenes played out. Human squads pushed through the streets, clearing buildings, hunting the hunters. They moved with a strange combination of caution and aggression. They took no unnecessary risks, but they also showed no hesitation when action was needed. Dot in the shelter beneath the city. Elder Marvos listened to the sounds of battle above for the first time in 3 days. The screams were not Valoran, they are fighting, Price said. The humans are actually fighting the craft on the ground, with soldiers. Marvos whispered, with their own people. Why would they risk so much? A new sound joined the battle. It was strange and haunting. It took Marvos a moment to realize what it was. The humans were singing. They were singing while they fought. It was not a song of joy. It was not a song of celebration. It was a song of defiance, of determination, of stubborn, impossible courage. The melody echoed between the buildings, carried by dozens of voices raised together in harmony. The crest did not understand it. They could not understand it. To them, battle was silent except for the screams of the dying. To them, war was cold and mechanical. They had never faced an enemy that sang. The song terrified them in a way they could not explain. Sergeant Marcus led his squad toward the shelter entrance. According to their intelligence, 4 million civilians were trapped below ground. The CFT had been trying to break through the blast doors. They had almost succeeded. What they found was a nightmare. Over 200 Kree warriors had gathered at the shelter entrance. They were cutting through the final barrier with plasma torches. Behind them, more warriors waited with nets and restraints. The harvest was about to begin. Marcus counted his squad, 12 soldiers against 200 enemy warriors. The math was simple. The math said they would lose. Marcus did not care about math. Listen up, he told his squad through their private channel. Those civilians have been waiting for 3 days. They have been listening to their friends and families die above them. They are scared and tired, and they have lost hope. We are going to give it back to them. How? Asked Primate Rodriguez. There are too many. Marcus smiled behind his helmet. There are never too many, not when you are fighting for something that matters. He stepped out of cover and began walking toward the craft. His squad followed without hesitation. The CFTH saw them coming. The warriors turned from the door, their red eyes focusing on the approaching humans. 200 against 12. The odds were overwhelming. Marcus raised his rifle and fired the first shot. The battle that followed would become legendary. The humans did not charge blindly. They did not throw their lives away. They fought smart and they fought hard. They used every piece of cover. They supported each other with perfect coordination. When one soldier fell, another took their place. Private Chun took a craft blade to her leg. She kept firing from the ground until a medic could reach her. Corporal Williams ran out of ammunition. He picked up a crest weapon and learned to use it in second. Sergeant Marcus himself killed 37 enemies before the battle was over. It took 2 hours, 2 hours of constant fighting, 2 hours of blood and pain and exhaustion, but at the end the Kree were dead, all of them. The blast doors opened slowly. Elder Maris was the first to emerge. He looked at the scene before him with eyes that could not believe what they were seeing. Dead CH everywhere, and standing among them, battered and bloody but alive, were 12 human soldiers. Marcus removed his helmet. His face was covered in sweat and dirt. There was a cut above his eye that was bleeding freely, but he smiled when he saw the Valoran elder. Sir, Marcus said, my name is Sergeant Marcus Cole, United Earth Systems Marine Corps. We are here to evacuate you to safety. Marrows opened his mouth to speak, but no words came. Behind him, thousands of Valorans began emerging from the shelter. They saw the humans. They saw what the humans had done. Some began to weep, others simply stared in wonder. Small child broke away from her mother and ran toward the soldiers. Marcus knelt down to meet her. The child reached out and touched his face as if checking to see if he was real. You came, she said in a tiny voice. You actually came. Marcus felt his eyes grow wet. He had seen many things in his years of service. He had done many terrible things, but in that moment, looking at the face of a child who had been saved from monsters, he remembered why he had become a soldier. We will always come, he said softly. That is what humans do. Behind them, more drop ships landed, more soldiers poured out. The evacuation of Satara Prime had begun, but far away in the darkness. Between the stars, the Kreth Hive commander was sending his own message. Call for help, a demand for reinforcements. The Prime swarm would answer. 2,000 ships would come. The humans had won the battle, but the war was just beginning. Admiral Yuki Tanaka stood in the medical bay of the Perseverance, watching the wounded being treated. Human and Valoran alike lay on beds and tables, injuries tended by doctors who asked no questions about species or origin. Pain was pain, blood was blood. The healers did not care where it came from. Battle for orbit had been won. 147 Crest ships destroyed. The rest had fled to the edge of the system. Too damaged to fight, but too stubborn to leave completely. Tanaka had lost 11 ships and over 400 crew members. She remembered every name. Her tactical officer, Commander Roberts, approached with a tablet in his hand. His face was grim. Admiral, we have intercepted a Crest transmission. The Hive commander has called for reinforcements. Tanaka took the tablet and read the report. Her expression did not change. The Prime swarm, yes ma'am, estimated strength is 2,000 vessels. They will arrive in approximately 8 hours. 2,000 ships. Tanaka looked around the medical bay, at the wounded soldiers, at the frightened Valoran refugees, at the exhausted doctors working without rest. She had 47 ships when this started. Now she had 36. Against 2,000. Have the Valorans been informed, she asked. Ambassador Thy knows. He has suggested that we evacuate immediately, take as many civilians as we can, and retreat before the Prime swarm arrives. It was the logical choice, the safe choice. Any other species would have taken it without hesitation. They had done enough. They had saved millions. No one could blame them for leaving now. Tanaka handed the tablet back to Commander Roberts. Get me a secure quantum link to Sol Command. Highest priority. Roberts hesitated. Admiral, what are you planning? I am going to request reinforcements of our own. The communication room was quiet. Tanaka sat alone before the screen, waiting for the connection to establish. When it did, the face of Fleet Admiral Chun appeared. He was an old man with white hair and tired eyes. He had commanded the United Earth Systems Navy for 30 years. Admiral Tanaka, he said, I have read your reports. Outstanding work. The Council sends its congratulations. With respect, sir, I am not calling about congratulations. I am calling to invoke protocol. Prometheus. There was a long silence. Fleet Admiral Chun leaned back in his chair, his expression shifted from surprise to understanding to something. That might have been pride. You want the full response, he said. The Kree prime swarm is coming. 2,000 ships. I have 36. If we retreat now, we save some civilians, but the Kree will return. They will finish what they started, and they will know that humanity can be chased away. And if we send everything, Tanaka met his eyes through the screen, then we show the galaxy what happens when someone threatens those under our protection. Fleet Admiral Chun was quiet for a moment, then he nodded slowly. Protocol Prometheus is approved. All available fleets will converge on your position. Expected arrival is 6 hours. How many ships, sir? All of them. Admiral, all of them. The channel closed. Tanaka sat alone in the darkness, thinking about what was coming. Protocol Prometheus had only been invoked twice in human history. First time was during the liberation of Mars. The second was the Battle of Proxima. Both times the enemy had been utterly destroyed. She stood and walked to the bridge. Her crew looked at her with tired eyes and questioning faces. They knew something was happening. They just did not know what. Ladies and gentlemen, Tanaka announced, reinforcements are on the way. I need everyone at their stations and ready for battle. The Crest think they can frighten us with numbers. They are about to learn how wrong they are. On the planet below, the evacuation continued. The Lorian civilians were loaded onto human transport ships. The wounded were treated. The dead were honored. Sergeant Marcus and his Marines worked alongside Valoran volunteers, carrying children and helping the elderly. Ambassador Thylex had come down from the orbital station to see the work firsthand. He walked among the refugees, speaking words of comfort, promising that the nightmare was ending. But when he looked at the sky, he felt his fear returning. Admiral Tanaka, he said through his communicator, is it true the prime swarm is coming? It is true, Tanaka replied. Then we must leave. Please, you have done more than anyone could ask. Do not sacrifice your people for a world that is already lost. Ambassador, this world is not lost, and we are not leaving. File did not understand. You cannot defeat 2,000 ships. It is impossible. Ambassador, I need you to trust me. Stay with your people. Keep them calm and watch the sky. In 6 hours. 6 hours passed. Slowly, the Kree remnant fleet regrouped at the edge of the system, waiting for their reinforcements. On the human ships, crews rested when they could and prepared when they could. Not everyone knew what was coming. Then the prime swarm arrived. They came through slip space like a tidal wave of darkness. 2,000 vessels, each one filled with warriors hungry for revenge. They spread across the system in a formation that blocked out the stars. The Hive commander broadcast a message to the human fleet. You have interfered with our harvest. You have killed our warriors. Now you will pay the price. Surrender your ships and we will grant you the honor of being consumed last. Admiral Tanaka listened to the message. She said nothing in response. The CFTH began their advance, 2,000 ships moving toward Sithar Prime, toward the human fleet that stood in their way, toward what they believed would be an easy victory. Then the sky tore open again. Not in one place, in dozens of places. Slip space ruptures bloomed across the system like flowers of light. Ships began emerging. Human ships, warships, and carriers and dreadnoughts, fleet after fleet. The first Sol Defense Fleet arrived with 112 vessels. The Third Expeditionary Force brought another 87. The Colonial Defense Network contributed 143. The Mars Combat Group, the Europa Squadron, the Titan Heavy Assault Division, ship after ship after ship. Ambassador Thylix watched from the surface with tears streaming down his face. He counted the vessels as they appeared. He stopped counting at 400. There were too many. When the arrivals finally ended, 612 human warships hung in space around Satara Prime. They formed a wall between the Kree and the planet, a wall of metal and weapons and human determination. Admiral Tanaka opened a channel to the Kree fleet. Her voice was calm and cold. This colony is under the protection of humanity. You have threatened innocent people. You have harvested civilians like animals. This ends now. Leave this system immediately and never return, or stay and learn why no one invades Earth. The Hive commander did not respond immediately. For the first time in the long history of the CF swarm, its leader felt something unfamiliar, something that tasted like doubt, something that smelled like fear. But the Krath were warriors. They did not retreat. They did not surrender. They had conquered 1,000 worlds, and they would not be stopped by these strange, emotional, primitive creatures. Attack, the Hive commander ordered. Destroy them all. 2,000 Kree ships charged forward. 612 human ships answered. The Battle of Satara Prime would be recorded in the history books. Of 1,000 species, it would be studied in militaremies across the galaxy. It would become legend. In 4 hours, the Kree Prime swarm was shattered. 1,700 vessels destroyed. 300 captured. The survivors fled into the darkness, carrying ties of terror back to their home worlds. The humans lost 89 ships. 3,412 crew members died defending a world that was not their own. When the battle was over, Admiral Tanaka received a message from Ambassador Thai. Why? It said, why did you do this? Why did you sacrifice so much for strangers? Tanaka thought for a long moment before she replied. Because someone has to. Because we remember what it is like to have no one come when you call for help. Because we swore that if we ever had the power to save others, we would use it no matter the cost. She paused, then added one more line. That is what it means to be human. The Galactic Union High Council Chamber was the largest enclosed space in the known galaxy. Its walls curved upward for Killam, designed to hold representatives from over 4,000 species. Floating platforms filled the air, each one carrying delegates from worlds scattered across 1,000,000 light years. The chamber hummed with 1,000 different languages being translated. Real time. Ambassador Thyle stood at the central podium, looking up at the assembled representatives. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Safar Prime. His world was still healing, his people were still mourning. But they were alive. They were free, and it was time for the galaxy to understand why. Honored delegates, he began, his voice amplified to reach every corner of the massive chamber. I come before you today not to plead for sympathy, not to ask for charity. I come to tell you a story about what happened when my world faced extinction, a story about who came to save us when no one else would. The chamber fell silent. 4,000 species listened as Thyles described the Attack, the CF swarm descending from the sky, the cities burning, the children screaming. He spoke of the distress calls he had sent and the rejections he had received. The Mallory could not spare ships. The Tandrix offered prayers. The Yulani suggested we surrender. His voice grew bitter. These are all eyes. These are the species we have traded with and worked beside for centuries. When we needed them most, they abandoned us. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Some delegates looked uncomfortable. Others looked away in shame. Then the humans responded. Daleks touched the control on the podium. A massive holographic display appeared above his head, showing the Battle of Saturn Prime in full detail. The delegates watched as 47 human ships faced 300 CF vessels. They watched the charge, the battle, the victory. They were outnumbered 6-1. Tile continued. Any rational species would have calculated the odds and stayed home. Any sensible commander would have refused the mission, but Admiral Yuki Tanaka did not calculate odds. She calculated lives. She looked at 4 million civilians about to be harvested like livestock, and she decided that was unacceptable. The hologram shifted to show the ground war. Human soldiers fighting in the streets. The desperate defense of the shelter. Entrance, Sergeant Marcus kneeling before a child he had just saved. They sent their own people to fight, not machines, not drones, living beings who chose to risk everything for strangers they had never met. When I asked one of their soldiers why, do you know what he told me? Dale paused, letting the silence build. He said it was the right thing to do, not the profitable thing, not the logical thing, the right thing. The hologram changed again, showing the arrival of the human reinforcements. 612 ships emerging from slip space. The wall of metal and determination that stood between the crest and the innocent. When the prime swarm arrived with 2,000 vessels, I begged Admiral Tanaka to retreat. I told her she had done enough. I told her she could not win. Tile shook his head slowly. She did not listen. Instead, she called for more ships. She invoked something called Protocol Prometheus. And within 6 hours, the entire human war fleet stood ready to fight. Several delegates gasped. Others leaned forward in their seats. The military experts among them understood what this meant. The humans had committed their entire offensive capability to defend a single colony world of a species they barely knew. 3,412 humans died protecting Sithar Prime. Phil said softly. 3,412 families lost someone they loved. For us, for strangers, for the simple principle that the strong should protect the weak. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of delegates from species who had refused to help. I have heard some of you call humans dangerous, uncontrollable, primitive. I have heard whispers that they are too aggressive, too emotional, too unpredictable. His voice hardened. Let me tell you what I call him. I call them heroes. I call them guardians. I call them the best friends any species could ever hope to have. The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates applauded. Others argued among themselves. A few shouted protests. Daleks waited for the noise to die down before continuing. In the 3 months since the battle, 14 species have requested protection treaties with humanity. 14 worlds have looked at what the humans did for us and asked if they would do the same for them. He paused. The humans said yes to every single one. A platform descended from the upper levels of the chamber on stood Admiral Yuki Tanaka, wearing her dress uniform, her medals gleaming in the light. She was smaller than most of the delegates in the room. She carried no weapons. She made no threatening gestures. But somehow every eye in the chamber was drawn to her. The council has asked me to explain humanity's actions, Tanaka said. Her voice was quiet but carried clearly through the translation systems. I will try, though I am not sure words are enough. She looked around the chamber, taking in the thousands of faces watching her. Humans have a complicated history. We have been conquerors and slaves. We have built empires and torn them down. We have committed terrible crimes against each other and achieved wonderful things. We are not perfect. We do not claim to be. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But we have learned something in our short existence. We have learned that strength without purpose is meaningless. We have learned that power without compassion is dangerous, and we have learned that the universe is full of darkness, full of creatures who prey on the weak and devour the helpless. Her eyes found the delegates from predatory species. They shifted uncomfortably under her gaze. Humanity has decided that we will not be one of those creatures. We will not stand idle while innocents suffer. We will not calculate the costs before saving lives. When someone calls for help, we will answer. When someone threatens the defenseless, we will respond. She turned to face the section of the chamber where the Kree representative usually sat. The seat was empty. The Kree had not sent anyone to this session. To those who would prey upon the weak, I have a simple message. We are watching, we are listening, and we are not afraid of you. Her voice grew cold. Drath learned this lesson the hard way. I hope others will be wise enough to learn it without making the same mistake. She turned back to face the full council. We do not seek war. We do not seek empire. We do not want to rule the galaxy or impose our will on others. But we will never abandon those who need our help. Call it primitive, call it emotional, call it whatever you like. She smiled, and in that smile was the weight of human history. Every struggle, every triumph, every sacrifice made so that future generations could stand here among the stars. We call it being human. The vote came 3 days later. The Galactic Union Council moved to elevate humanity to Tier 1 protectorate status. It was the highest honor the Council could grant. It recognized humanity as a guardian species responsible for maintaining peace and protecting member worlds from aggression. The vote passed with overwhelming support. In the shadows of the council chamber, representatives from a dozen predatory species held quiet meetings. They talked about invasion plans that would never be launched, about conquest schedules that would be quietly abandoned, about the new reality they faced. The galaxy had changed. For thousands of years, the strong had preyed upon the weak without consequence. Species rose and fell based on their ability to fight. Those who could not defend themselves were consumed by those who could. But now there was something new, something unexpected, something that watched from the darkness with patient eyes and ready weapons. Humanity had arrived on Earth in a small apartment in the city of Tokyo. An old woman sat watching the news broadcast from the Galactic Union. Her name was Yuki Tanaka. She was retired now, 3 years after the Battle of Saturn Prime. Her medals hung on the wall. Her memories kept her company. Daughter Granddaughter burst through the door, excitement shining in her young eyes. Grandmother, did you see? The Pellerin system just requested a protection treaty that makes 27 species now. Tanaka smiled and patted the seat beside her. Come sit with me. The girl settled next to her grandmother, watching the news with wonder. Images played across the screen, human ships patrolling distant stars, human soldiers standing guard on alien worlds, human diplomats negotiating peace between former enemies. Grandmother, the girl asked, why do we do it? Why do we protect all these species? Some of them do not even like us. Tanaka was quiet for a moment. She thought about the Battle of Saphur Prime, about the soldiers who had died, about the children who had been saved, about the look in Ambassador Thylex's eyes when he realized that help was actually coming, because someone has to. She said finally, because the universe is dark and cold, and the only warmth in it is what we choose to create, because we have the power to make things better. And that power brings responsibility. She put her arm around her granddaughter. And because we are human, it is what we do. Outside, the stars were shining in. Somewhere among them, on a 100 different worlds, people looked up at the sky and felt something they had not felt in a very long time. Hope that when the darkness came, they would not face it alone. Hope that someone would answer their call. Hope that humanity would come, and they were.